Hi, my name is Adam Powley, and I write at classroompowerups.com. One of my popular posts recently has been something called DreadSheets. Now, the DreadSheets are a way for me to create a formative assessment out of something that would traditionally be more of a summative assessment. I'm able to ask students questions, get a temperature of the room, and create a fun and engaging way to assess those questions that normally would be either a quiz or a test. But these boss fight battles are more interesting because students are able to collaborate. They are able to fight against a monster. And the way that I have my boss fight set up right now is that it is a collaborative victory, which means that everybody in the class has to defeat the boss, or the boss is not defeated. It's something like the pandemic game. This is a mechanic that's being used more and more recently. This, for example, is my boss Tonka. Get it? It's a Tonka truck that is a transformer. I will link to the DreadSheets post in this particular post with this video. And I just wanted to walk through a bit of the ins and outs and the how-tos. I'll create a second post that has a little bit more information on the actual coding that I've done to make the spreadsheets work. There are some basics that I want to go over. The first is that there are three main chunks to the boss fight battle that I've developed, but really it's the concept that I think is more interesting. This idea of the fun way to engage students. So I call it DreadSheets, DreadSheets being a fun little twist on spreadsheets because you are fighting a boss. This is the projection template. So in my classroom, I would have anywhere between 5 to 6 groups. 5 groups would be fighting this boss. And I sometimes will allow a group to act as the boss who would get a chance to attack back. Against the other groups. I find that's a good way to engage those griefers, the killers, the disruptors. So the projection sheet would be on the board, and as students answer questions right, they're able to knock points off of the hit points right here. When the boss takes points off, the group 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 will see their hit points reduced as well. Now, the great thing about the boss fight is if one group loses, they all lose. Either they all win or they all lose, which means that the groups, while they also have to collaborate with each other, they also have to collaborate amongst each other. So the groups have to work together to develop a strategy to fight this big boss. So the boss fight starts with a group answering a question. This is what the group will see. Now in my class, we've sort of set up the norms of what it means to play the game. So they know that there's several different types of groups that they can be. Each group has its own particular power. And again, that'll be in the writing if you want to take a look at that. You have the tech wizard, a medic, which the medic gets a med kit, which they can give power to the other groups if the other group's powers are getting low. There's the warrior class, and they have this XYZ cannon attack, which is a more powerful attack. There is the bandit, which can steal missed opportunities from the boss. The boss has a special attack when students miss a certain number of questions, either 5, 10, 15, whatever the case may be in your class. The bandit can steal those attacks. There's the text wizard, which it can block an attack if they get a question right. And the berserker, which can chain their attacks together. Not every one of them has a special side over here. Now, if you just want to do the basic version of the game, which is what I started moving towards the end of the game, the semester, so that we could get more questions in and could play a little bit more quickly. The basic is that a question is projected on the board. I like to use this Plickers app because I can scan. And even if you don't want to use the scan option, if you have your cell phone, you can click on the live view and you can project your questions on the board, and you can change them right from your cell phone so that as you do this, you can walk around the room, change the question, and get kind of a feel for the room. Typically, I will have 4 or 5 groups. The group will have the Plickers card, and they can answer that way. Or they have little ABCD cards. They can put those up. If you'd like to do something different, you can have the students have little whiteboards. Just laminate a white sheet of paper and it works like a whiteboard. And they can write out an answer, and then you can just give them a thumbs up when you see the answer. And then the way I prevent cheating is that the student holds up the answer, one person in the group holds up the answer when they figured it out, and then I'll just nod my head at them, and then they have to put the answer back down. That usually prevents most cheating, and then if there's only 5 groups, you can kind of see who's doing what. So if the student gets the question right, or if the group gets the question right, then they get to roll a die. I like to use one of these little 10-sided die. Now the 10-sided die is great because it has percentages on here, and I just treat them as numbers. So the attacks are out of 100. So if they roll a 10, they get a 10. If they roll double zeros, they get a 100 attack. And they just put that roll right in here in the column. So if they roll a 100, then they have attacked it with a 100. What's projected on the board is this number here. So you'll be able to see that's 1560. Let's say we take another, let's say they roll the second time, they get a question answer right, they get a 60, and it takes 60 points off. Now, one of the things that I do, and if you want to keep it simple, you just ask a question, then they either roll, or if they miss, they have to write the word miss. And if they miss the question, this is one of the ways we can collect some data. You'll see that the group number misses goes here. And you'll see that the miss meter went from 16 to 17. Let me show you that again. Let's say they missed question number 4. They went up to 18. Now what's really neat is that in the projection sheet, we can go and see who's missed what. Now, the last time I played this, groups B and E forgot to take theirs off. So you can see this is what we just entered in. This is all just, I'm pulling the data here from each one of the different groups. Group B and Group E also had a number of misses. Now, this is not typically what it would look like, but if I were to go back and look at this after the review game, I would notice, well, each one of the groups had a hard time with question number 4, and I can go back and look at question number 4 and see what question I asked, and I can see that that's something that I'm going to need to be refreshing them on. So we have our projection sheet here, and you'll notice that as the boss takes more damage, let's just do a quick 500-point hit here. The boss changes, so it shows battle damage. There we go. Now I also said that the boss has the opportunity to attack back. This is how I keep track of this. No, I guess that's not so important. The boss does have the opportunity to attack back, and I can do this one of 2 ways. Either I act as the boss and I just take 100 points off each round, or I can have the students have a group of students act as the boss. And that's a very popular opportunity for some of the students. They like to be the bad guy, the anti-hero. And when this is the case, then I have them answer the question along with the rest of the group. And if the boss gets it right, they have an attack of 100 points all the time. And they attack randomly. So let's say the boss takes 100 points off, but then they can choose which group to attack. Usually I do this through a dice roll. If there is a group of 4, we have this wonderful 4-sided die. It looks just like a pyramid. They roll the die, and then they would be able to attack whatever the dice roll is. If there's 5 groups, they just roll the 10-sided die. Odd and 1 or 2 is group. 1 or a 6 is group 1. A 2 or a 7 is group 2, and so on. They just roll with that. And we adjust more or less. If there's only 3 groups, then so on. The power drain, this is an option where they can say group 1 if they want to do, if it is a special attack, which I don't use very often, but is built into the program. A power drain will not only take 100 points off of the opponent, so let's say group 1, it'll take 100 points off of group 1, but then it'll add it onto the boss's power. I use this power sometimes if the groups are not paying attention. It's a way to get them to focus. The boss gets a power drain next time if you guys don't pay attention, or if you're being quiet, you're not being quiet. Okay. Counterattacks and rage strikes, again, these are just special attacks that the boss can have. If you want to do a simple version of it, you don't have to. A counterattack, if if they get to that 10 miss mark, the boss then gets the next question. If the boss gets that question right, then they randomly select one of the groups through that dice roll and they attack with 100 points. A rage strike is just a random roll. So this means that more than half of the groups got the question wrong. So if there's 4 groups and 3 out of the 4 get the question wrong, well, the boss gets to rage strike. They get to attack everybody. So they get to take 40 points. They roll the 10-sided die. 40 points go off of each opponent. So if we go back to the projection sheet, you'll notice here I've taken 40 points off. That was the rage strike. Let me go back to the blank. So you'll notice here, it's all zeroed out. So each group starts with 2,000, and you can adjust this by going, I'll show you that in the code part. So let's say the boss is fighting. The boss gets a question right. They get 100 points. They can take off of any group, and they roll the die, and group 1 is attacked. If we look back at the projection sheet, you'll see group 1's points go down. They get the next question right. They roll the die. Group 3 is attacked. You'll see group 3's points go down. This is also kept track of on each group's personal page, so they have this in front of them as well. So you'll see this is group 1. Group 1 had 100 points damage, and their little gauge goes down. And again, if any single group goes down to 0, they all lose. I hope that helps, and I will try to get into a little bit more of the coding on here, and I'll make sure that the boss fight template copies are all up to date. Thanks, and I hope you enjoyed, and have fun with boss fights in your classroom.